Paul, thanks so much for your time. It's hard to believe that it was 8 years ago. I can't imagine this gets any easier for you.
Yeah, it has been a long time. We obviously feel particularly bad for the loss of our parents, but we also feel dreadful for what's happening in Ukraine right now. The fact the conflict has escalated really brings it home to us that a lot of people are suffering.
Indeed. On that, what do you make of the timing of this latest push by the Australian government?
Well, it is the logical progression of a process that has been underway for a while. So they were trying to negotiate with Russia. The Netherlands and Australia were negotiating with Russia over this interstate motion or movement that they were putting forward, but Russia withdrew from those negotiations. So the next step appears to be to escalate that to the ICAO.
Do you want compensation?
Oh, look, I'd prefer to just see that this sort of thing doesn't happen in future with better risk management and better rules for flying over conflict zones. I do also think that there needs to be a solution to that conflict in Ukraine, is where my focus would be.
It is a reminder that this war started long before 19 days ago, and it was more than 8 years ago when MH17 was shot down.
Yeah, it has been a long road, and I really would have hoped that this conflict could have been resolved peacefully by now, but it's really hard to see it escalating and causing such a lot of pain and suffering and more displacement and more lives lost, which really, I hope they can find a peaceful solution to it sooner rather than later.
Russia has never admitted any guilt. Does that compound your grief? And where does the blame lie? Do you buy that it was Russian separatists, or do you think this is something that happened because they were backed by Russia?
Well, it does. Clearly, Russia did have a role to play. Personally, I blame the conflict itself because I don't think that the people involved probably would have intended to bring down a passenger plane. So I put the blame generally for those involved in the conflict. I mean, the criminal trial has accused people who are fairly senior in the separatist army leadership of the war crime. So that's good that they're going after the leaders. But I do blame Russia for fomenting the war. But overall, I think we need to look at the realpolitik of this and actually find a solution that reassures Russia that NATO isn't trying to threaten its security. We just need to find a way not that we want to give much away, and I obviously support the Ukrainians in their struggle, but it's hard to see how this ends well. So we have to find a practical solution that reduces the conflict.
Indeed, Paul. Closure is a word that I hate using because I don't know whether you'll ever get closure, but what do you need to happen for you to come close to that?
I think if Russia was to acknowledge its role in the tragedy and basically acknowledge basic facts, that would be helpful. Clearly, that may not happen until we have a regime change in Russia, but an apology and an acknowledgement of facts would go some way towards making families feel better about the situation.
Paul, I hope you get that. Thanks so much for your time today.
No worries.